Ladies and gentlemen, if there is one skill that determines success more than anything else, it is self-discipline. The ability to control your actions, master your emotions, and stay consistent with your goals is the foundation of every great achievement. Talent may open the door, but discipline is what keeps it open. Self-discipline is not something you're born with. It is a skill you build, a muscle you strengthen. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Let me share with you some powerful keys that will help you build unshakable self-discipline and transform your life. The very first step to building self-discipline is defining clear goals. Think of it this way: if you don't know where you're going, how can you ever get there? Imagine driving a car without a destination in mind. You might move, you might burn fuel, but you'll just be wandering aimlessly. The same applies to life. Without clear, specific goals, your efforts are scattered, your energy is wasted, and your discipline has no purpose. When your goals are vague, your discipline remains weak. Saying, "I want to be successful," or "I want to be healthier," doesn't inspire discipline because those statements are too broad. They lack clarity. Success could mean 1,000 different things. Health could mean anything from losing weight to improving your sleep. Your mind needs precision, not generalities. Clear goals are like the GPS coordinates that give direction to your effort. Now, here's the truth: the brain loves clarity. When you give your mind a target that is specific, measurable, and time-bound, it starts searching for ways to achieve it. The clearer your vision, the stronger your discipline becomes. For example, instead of saying, "I want to read more," say, "I will read 20 pages of a personal development book every night before bed." That single shift from vague to specific gives your discipline something to hold on to. Another reason clear goals are so powerful is because they create accountability. When your goals are written down, they exist outside your imagination. They become real. You can see them, read them, and remind yourself of them daily. It is no longer just a thought in your head. It's a commitment on paper. Studies have consistently shown that people who write down their goals are far more likely to achieve them than those who don't. Writing forces you to clarify, and clarity strengthens discipline. Think about athletes preparing for competition. They don't just say, "I want to win." They know exactly what time they need to run, how much they need to lift, or how many repetitions they need to complete. Their goals are precise, and because of that precision, their discipline sharpens. They wake up earlier, they train harder, they make sacrifices, all because their goals are defined. Without that clarity, even the most talented athlete will drift. When you define your goals, it's equally important to break them down into smaller, actionable steps. Big goals often feel overwhelming, and that can crush your discipline before you even begin. For instance, if your goal is to lose 20 pounds, don't just focus on the number. Break it into smaller targets. "I will exercise for 30 minutes 5 days a week," or "I will replace sugary drinks with water." These smaller goals create daily discipline, which in turn leads to long-term achievement. Another powerful tool is visualization. Once you define your goal, take a few minutes every day to picture yourself achieving it. See yourself at your ideal weight, running that marathon, or standing on the stage giving that speech. Feel the pride, the confidence, the energy. When you combine clear goals with vivid visualization, your brain begins to act as if it's already possible, and your discipline grows stronger because you're emotionally connected to the outcome. The lack of clear goals is the number one reason why so many people struggle with discipline. They say they want change, but they never define exactly what they want or why they want it. And as a result, they give up when things get tough. But when your goal is crystal clear, your discipline becomes a shield. It protects you from distractions, it keeps you focused, and it gives you the power to keep going even when motivation fades. So remember, this clarity is power. Discipline without direction is wasted effort. But discipline fueled by a clear goal becomes unstoppable. Write your goals, define them with precision, break them into steps, and visualize them every single day. When you do, you'll find that self-discipline no longer feels like a burden. It becomes the natural path to something greater. If you want to build unshakable self-discipline, you must develop strong reasons for why you're doing what you're doing. The truth is, discipline doesn't exist in isolation. It's not about forcing yourself to suffer through tasks or endlessly pushing yourself without purpose. Real discipline is fueled by something deeper, something powerful that comes from within, a strong reason. Without it, discipline fades quickly. With it, you become unstoppable. Think about it. How many times have you set a goal, felt excited for a few days, and then slowly let it slip away? That happens because your reason wasn't strong enough. The why behind your actions wasn't big enough to carry you through the days when motivation disappears, when you feel tired, or when challenges appear. Motivation is temporary, but reasons are permanent. They're the fire that keeps burning even when the winds of difficulty blow against you. Ask yourself, why do I want this goal? Why do I want to be disciplined in this area of my life? The answers you give yourself will determine how far you'll go. If your reason is shallow, like, I want to look good for summer, you might work hard for a few weeks, but when life gets busy, you'll quit. But if your reason is strong, I want to be healthy so I can live longer, have energy for my children, and never be dependent on others, then your discipline is tied to something much bigger than yourself. And when the goal is bigger than you, your commitment grows deeper. Look at the people who achieve extraordinary things. They don't always have more talent, more resources, or better opportunities. What they have is a reason so strong that nothing can shake it. A person who wakes up every day at 5 a.m. to work on their dream doesn't do it because they like getting up early. They do it because their reason for success is greater than the comfort of staying in bed. They know what's at stake, and that knowledge fuels their discipline. Your reasons should stir your emotions. Logic gives you clarity, but emotion gives you power. When your goals are connected to your heart, not just your mind, you unlock energy you never thought you had. That's why people will go to unimaginable lengths to protect their families, pursue their passions, or overcome hardship. They're not relying on willpower alone. They're driven by deep reasons that make discipline automatic. It's also important to revisit your reasons regularly. Life gets noisy, distractions pile up, and it's easy to forget why you started. That's when discipline weakens. But if you constantly remind yourself of your reasons, they stay alive. Write them down, keep them visible. Repeat them to yourself when you wake up and before you sleep. Discipline thrives in the presence of strong reminders. Think of two people starting a fitness journey. The first says, I want to lose some weight. The second says, I want to get fit because my father died young of a heart attack, and I refuse to let history repeat itself. I want to be there to see my children grow, to walk my daughter down the aisle, to play with my grandchildren one day. Who do you think will stay disciplined when temptation comes? The second person, because their reason is carved into their soul. This is the secret. Discipline without reasons feels like punishment, but discipline with reasons feels like purpose. The moment your why becomes strong enough, the how no longer intimidates you. You stop asking, do I feel like doing this? And instead you say, I must do this because too much is at stake. That shift changes everything. So dig deep. Don't settle for surface level reasons. Attach your discipline to your values, your loved ones, your future, your legacy. Make your reasons so strong that giving up is no longer an option. When you do, you'll discover that discipline is not something you have to force anymore. It becomes a natural expression of who you are and what you stand for. And when that happens, success is no longer a matter of chance, it becomes inevitable. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to build self-discipline is that they try to change everything at once. They look at their life, feel dissatisfied, and then attempt to overhaul it in a single night. They commit to waking up at 5 a.m., going to the gym for 2 hours, cutting out all junk food, reading 3 books a week, and working 12 hours a day. And what happens? Within a week, they're exhausted, frustrated, and right back where they started. The truth is, lasting discipline doesn't begin with giant leaps. It begins with small, consistent steps that build momentum over time. Think of discipline like climbing a staircase. You don't leap from the bottom to the top in one jump. You take one step, then another, and then another. Each small step builds confidence, strengthens your willpower, and makes the next step easier. Success is nothing more than the accumulation of small victories stacked on top of one another. When you start small, you remove the weight of overwhelm. You give yourself the chance to succeed. If your goal is to develop the habit of exercising, don't promise yourself an hour-long workout every day. Instead, commit to just 10 minutes. 10 minutes is manageable. It's so small that you can't say no to it. And here's the magic. Once you start those 10 minutes, most of the time you'll go longer anyway, because getting started is always the hardest part. Momentum is the secret weapon of self-discipline. Once you build it, it works for you, not against you. Imagine pushing a heavy boulder. At first, it feels impossible. The boulder doesn't move. You push again and again, and still, progress is slow. But then it begins to shift just a little. With every push, it rolls further, and soon it gathers speed. The same happens in life. At the beginning, discipline feels like a struggle. But if you stay consistent with small actions, momentum kicks in, and what once felt difficult starts to feel natural. This is why people who achieve great things often say they didn't notice their growth while it was happening. They just focused on small, daily wins. An author doesn't write a book in one sitting. They write a page today, a page tomorrow, and another the next day. Before long, those small efforts add up to hundreds of pages. A marathon runner doesn't begin by running 26 miles. They start with 1 mile, then 2, then 3. Every small step builds the strength, stamina, and confidence to handle bigger challenges. Starting small also helps you build trust with yourself. Many people fail at discipline because they make promises to themselves and then break them. Each broken promise weakens their confidence. But when you commit to something small and follow through, you rebuild that trust. You tell yourself, I can rely on me. And once you trust yourself with the small things, you'll be able to trust yourself with the big ones. Another powerful aspect of starting small is that it rewires your identity. Every time you take a small, disciplined action, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to become. When you read for 10 minutes a day, you reinforce the belief, I am a reader. When you go for a short jog, you reinforce the belief, I am someone who takes care of my body. Identity creates momentum because the more you see yourself in a new way, the more your actions naturally align with it. Too often, people wait for motivation before they act. But motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. Discipline grows when you act first, even in small ways, and let motivation follow. You may not always feel like doing the big things, but you can always do something small. And if you do it long enough, those small actions compound into extraordinary results. So remember, don't be overwhelmed by the size of your dreams. Don't be intimidated by how far you have to go. Instead, ask yourself, what small step can I take today? Take that step. Tomorrow, take another. Day by day, step by step, you will build momentum so strong that nothing can stop you. And when that momentum carries you forward, self-discipline will no longer feel like a struggle. It will feel like the natural rhythm of your life. One of the greatest obstacles to self-discipline is not a lack of willpower, but the presence of too many temptations. People often think discipline means constantly battling with themselves, trying to resist every distraction, every craving, and every urge. But the truth is, self-discipline becomes much easier when you remove the things that pull you away from your goals. The environment you create either works for you or against you. If your surroundings are filled with temptations, you will constantly drain your energy fighting them. But if you design your environment wisely, discipline feels natural because the distractions are no longer in your path. Think about this if you're trying to eat healthy, but your kitchen is filled with cookies, chips, and soda. Every time you walk into that room, you start a battle in your mind. Part of you wants to stay disciplined, but another part of you is pulled toward the temptation. And eventually, no matter how strong you are, if you fight that battle often enough, you will lose. But if your kitchen only has healthy food, there is no battle to fight. The easiest way to resist temptation is to eliminate it before it even appears. This principle applies in every area of life. If you want to focus on your work, turn off notifications on your phone. Better yet, put the phone in another room while you're working. If you want to save money, stop browsing online shopping websites for entertainment. If you want to wake up earlier, don't keep your alarm clock within arm's reach where you can hit snooze. Put it across the room so that you must physically get up. Small environmental changes like these make a huge difference because they remove the constant friction of temptation. Many people underestimate the power of their surroundings. They believe they can rely on sheer willpower alone. But willpower is like a battery. It drains the more you use it. Every time you resist temptation, you spend a little bit of willpower. That's why by the end of the day, people are more likely to give in to cravings, skip workouts, or waste time. It's not because they are weak, it's because they've been fighting too many small battles all day long. By eliminating temptations, you conserve your willpower for the moments that truly matter. Another key is to replace temptations with alternatives that align with your goals. If you're trying to cut down on social media, don't just delete the apps and sit in silence. Fill that gap with something meaningful, a book, a podcast, or a hobby. If you're trying to stop watching television late at night, create a bedtime ritual that excites you, maybe journaling, stretching, or listening to calming music. Discipline isn't about living a life of deprivation. It's about designing a life that makes the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. Surround yourself with people who support your goals as well. If your friends constantly tempt you to skip the gym or spend recklessly, your discipline will always be under attack. But if you spend time with people who are committed, focused, and disciplined themselves, their habits will influence you in the right direction. Environment is not just physical, it's social too. The people you allow into your life either strengthen your discipline or sabotage it. The beauty of eliminating temptations is that it doesn't take monumental effort. It takes awareness and preparation. Look at your daily routines. Identify the places where you keep slipping, where you feel the most tempted, and ask yourself, how can I remove or reduce that temptation before it even appears? A disciplined life is not built by fighting every urge. It is built by designing systems that make discipline the default choice. At the end of the day, remember this: you don't rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your environment. If your environment is filled with distractions, temptations, and constant battles, discipline will always feel like a struggle. But if you create an environment that supports your goals, you won't need to force discipline. It will happen naturally. Success becomes easier not because you suddenly have endless willpower, but because you've removed the obstacles that were holding you back. If there is one quality that separates those who succeed from those who fall short, it is consistency. Self-discipline is not about doing something once with great intensity. It is about doing the right things repeatedly, even when you don't feel like it. The power of consistency lies in its ability to turn small actions into extraordinary results over time. Success is not built in a single day. It is built in the daily habits that seem small and ordinary, but when compounded, they create extraordinary transformation. Most people misunderstand discipline because they think it requires bursts of effort or moments of inspiration. They believe they must feel motivated every time they act. But the truth is, motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes just like the weather. If you wait until you feel motivated, you will remain stuck. What creates results is consistency. Showing up day after day, regardless of how you feel. When you act consistently, you prove to yourself that discipline is not dependent on your emotions. It is a decision you make every single day. Consistency is what builds habits. At first, a new behavior feels uncomfortable. You have to force yourself to do it. You may resist, procrastinate, or doubt whether it's worth it. But the more you repeat it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the behavior becomes automatic. It is no longer a struggle. It is simply part of who you are. Just like brushing your teeth, you don't debate whether you should do it, you just do it. That is the power of consistency. It rewires your brain and creates lasting change. Think about a person learning to play an instrument. If they practice intensely for 10 hours in one day and then don't touch the instrument for weeks, they will not improve much. But if they practice for just 30 minutes every day, their skill grows rapidly. Why? Because consistency strengthens memory, builds muscle, and creates mastery. The same principle applies to fitness, learning, relationships, and business. Small, consistent effort beats occasional bursts of energy every single time. Consistency also builds trust with yourself and with others. Every time you follow through on a commitment, no matter how small, you reinforce the belief that you are reliable. You start to believe in your own word. This self-trust is the foundation of confidence. On the other hand, when you are inconsistent, you break promises to yourself, and that erodes your confidence. Others notice your consistency as well. People trust those who show up, not once, but continuously. Whether it's a coach, a leader, a parent, or a friend, consistency communicates reliability. But here's the challenge: consistency requires patience. We live in a world that glorifies instant results. We want success overnight, but real growth doesn't work that way. Consistency means planting seeds every day and trusting that in time the harvest will come. It means putting in the work even when there are no visible results yet. This patience is where most people fail. They quit too soon, not realizing that their breakthrough was just around the corner. A simple strategy to practice consistency is to create routines. Routines remove the need for constant decision-making. Instead of asking yourself, should I work out today? Make it automatic by deciding once, I work out every morning at 7 a.m. When something becomes routine, you don't negotiate with yourself. You just follow through. This removes friction and makes discipline easier. Another key is to measure progress, not perfection. Consistency doesn't mean you will never miss a day. Life happens. But what matters is that you get back on track immediately. Missing one workout, one study session, or one healthy meal won't ruin you. But breaking the pattern repeatedly will. Consistency is about staying in the game, even when you stumble. Over time, the overall pattern matters far more than isolated moments. When you practice consistency, something powerful happens. Momentum takes over. What was once hard becomes easier, and what was once a struggle becomes second nature. The effort you put in today makes tomorrow's effort easier. That is why consistency is the bridge between discipline and success. Without it, you are starting over again and again. With it, you are building upon each effort until your results multiply. At the end of the day, consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't always feel exciting, but it is the quiet force behind every great success story. It is the difference between dreams that fade away and dreams that become reality. If you can commit to showing up every day, doing the work, and trusting the process, then self-discipline will no longer feel like a burden. It will feel like the natural rhythm of your life. And in that rhythm, you will find the key to lasting success. One of the greatest traps people fall into when trying to build self-discipline is the pursuit of perfection. They set a goal, create a plan, and expect themselves to follow it flawlessly. The moment they slip up, even in the smallest way, they label themselves as failures. That single mistake often becomes the reason they give up entirely. But true discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about making steady progress. If you want to sustain discipline for the long term, you must learn to reward progress, not demand perfection. The problem with perfection is that it creates unrealistic expectations. No one on this earth is flawless. Everyone stumbles, everyone has setbacks, everyone makes mistakes. Perfection sets a standard that no human being can maintain, and the pressure of that expectation eventually breaks your spirit. But when you shift your focus to progress, every step forward counts. You stop beating yourself up for what you didn't do and start appreciating what you did accomplish. That mindset fuels discipline instead of killing it. Consider the example of someone who wants to develop the habit of exercising. If they aim for perfection, they'll commit to working out 6 days a week without fail. The first time they miss a session because of work or family obligations, they'll feel like they've ruined everything. That guilt can spiral into frustration, and before long, they abandon the habit altogether. But if the same person focuses on progress, they'll celebrate the fact that they completed 4 workouts that week when previously they were doing none. That shift in perspective keeps them motivated to continue rather than quitting over imperfection. Progress matters because it builds momentum. Even small improvements create positive reinforcement. When you acknowledge your effort, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical of reward, which strengthens the habit loop. That means the very act of recognizing your progress increases your desire to keep going. On the other hand, when you punish yourself for imperfection, you weaken that loop, and your discipline begins to feel like punishment instead of empowerment. Rewarding progress doesn't mean lowering your standards or settling for mediocrity. It means being realistic about growth and understanding that mastery is built over time. If your goal is to save money, you don't need to beat yourself up for not saving thousands right away. Celebrate the first $100 you set aside, then the next. If your goal is to read more, celebrate finishing your first book rather than criticizing yourself for not reading 10. These small victories add up, and over time, they become the foundation for larger successes. Another powerful benefit of focusing on progress is that it keeps you resilient. Life is unpredictable. There will always be obstacles, challenges, and setbacks that you cannot control. If perfection is your only standard, these obstacles will derail you. But if you measure yourself by progress, you'll keep moving forward even when life gets messy. You'll remind yourself that every step, no matter how small, is still movement in the right direction. That resilience is the heart of long-term discipline. Rewarding progress can take many forms. Sometimes it's as simple as pausing to acknowledge your effort and say, "I'm proud of what I did today." Other times it's giving yourself a small reward when you hit a milestone, treating yourself to something you enjoy, spending time with loved ones, or simply taking a moment to reflect on how far you've come. The reward doesn't have to be grand. It just needs to reinforce the behavior you want to keep repeating. Remember, the journey of discipline is not a straight line. It's a series of steps forward, sometimes a few steps back, and then more steps forward again. The key is to keep walking, keep moving, and keep growing. By rewarding progress, you give yourself the encouragement to continue. You no longer demand perfection, which is impossible. Instead, You demand persistence, which is within your control. At the end of the day, it's not about whether you did everything perfectly. It's about whether you're further ahead than you were yesterday. That is the true measure of discipline. If you can learn to celebrate the small wins along the way, you'll find joy in the process, strength in the struggle, and motivation to keep going. And when you look back months or years from now, you'll realize that those small steps of progress, rewarded, appreciated, and repeated, were what led you to the life you once only dreamed of. Self-discipline is freedom. It frees you from excuses from procrastination and from the limits of your old habits. The moment you decide to take full control of your life, your discipline will carry you to heights you never imagined. Remember this, you will never always be motivated, but you can always be disciplined. And when you build discipline, success becomes inevitable.